And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Winter is an integral part of Canada, from the Indigenous people through the colonists to the current inhabitants of the country. We all had to learn to adapt to a particular climate in these northern territories. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1988.
In 1929, in Prince Rupert Cold's storage rooms, keeping North Coast fish from drying out was a problem. That's when Otto Young joined the staff of the Pacific Fisheries Experimental Station. Young, through a number of inventions, improved the texture, taste, and quality of North Coast fresh fish. In the late 60s, Malcolm Dunderdale of McMillan Blodell's Queen Charlotte Island Division helped with the communication between crane operators and the logging operation they were working on with the invention of the UHF video link on logging sites. Fishermen in the Hecate Strait need rugged, dependable communication equipment. And although the telephone wasn't invented here in the Northwest, a new brand of radio telephones were developed and manufactured in Prince Rupert by a Prince Rupert resident, Gordon Daniels. All three of these Northwest inventions were out of a need for a new way of doing things. It was out of that necessity that Alan Cameron came up with his invention. The Cameron family lives 45 kilometers north of Terrace in this log home. But Al would be the first to tell you that along with the peacefulness and beauty of living outside of town comes a few problems. That's where Al's invention comes in.
Well, it was Christmas time 1984, and the temperature went down to about 26 or 27 below. And I have that 10 kilowatt Lister diesel power plant out there, and I fought that thing for an hour and a half, 2 days in a row to try to get it going, and I just had a terrible time.
The solution Al came up with is fairly simple. Basically just a piece of pipe and a heat source, exhaust from his truck.
I backed my truck up to my power plant and positioned this device that I had. And I set it about that far away from the bottom of my power plant where most of the oil is contained. And I clamped it onto my tailpipe, and I just let my truck idle for about 25 minutes. And I went over, and the power plant had all turned white with frost and what have you from the moisture and what have you. And it certainly didn't look good, but I pressed the starter, and I couldn't believe it started up like it was the middle of July.
By accident, Al had come up with the concept for exhausto heat, and he began refining the idea in his shop. He realized that if heat from his exhaust could start a frozen generator, it could also start a frozen vehicle.
If my vehicle won't start and cold weather is the problem, and your vehicle is running, then I can use the exhaust from your vehicle to solve my problem.
Al says the heat from the exhaust of an average vehicle is about 600 degrees, more than enough to start up a second vehicle on days like this.
Generally speaking, the major problem is that the oil becomes thick and your motor won't turn over quickly enough. And I would imagine, you know, for the public, that would be the major use. However, once in a while you'll get ice in a starting motor or a fuel pump. You can use this device to thaw it out. Once in a while you'll get ice in a gas line, same thing, gas or ice in a carburetor. Often it won't turn over quickly enough because maybe the battery is down. By heating the battery you can make it that much more efficient. You can use it for thawing out frozen hubs on four-wheel drives, which, by the way, we have already done quite a few different times.
It sounds like you can use it for pretty much anything that needs extreme heat.
That's correct. Anything where cold weather is a problem, we fully believe that it will solve the situation.
Al had the product and identified a definite need, but that's only half the job when you've invented something new. He then went through the lengthy and costly procedure of patenting exhausto heat.
I'd always heard the chances of getting a patent were like getting hit by lightning twice in the same place, and I thought, well, you know, maybe there is something here, and not only that, but if it does what I think that it can do, then Also, I figure that it's a service to anybody that could require it or use it.
With the Exhausto heat patent for the United States and patent pending in Canada and 8 European countries, Al recruited the services of his son and a friend to help with marketing.
We're looking for distributors in the northern regions, maybe of each province, Northwest Territories, Yukon. But until we can prove a market, we'd just like to, what we're doing is we're going out on our own. We're hoping to make another trip in another month and a half in the far north. Our last trip I only went up to the Cassiar. I think this time of year we're going to have to go a lot farther than that.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Arthur Sicard worked for his father, a dairy farmer, and was initially interested in making milk deliveries easier during the winter. Sicard worked on the device for over 30 years, and in 1925, he completed his first machine called the Sicard Snow Remover Snowblower. Let's return to the archives to discover what it takes to get an idea to market.
Have you looked at ways of, say, stepping up production so that you can start mass producing the product?
Yeah, we've just done a test run, or a pilot run, I guess, this winter of about 100 units. We're hoping to sell all of them this year, and just to test the market, see how it goes, and if all goes well, then we'll be stepping it up for early next fall.
Right now, this is a fairly small operation, with Al Sr. doing most of the production in his shop and his son and third associate doing the legwork, marketing, and giving demonstrations. But they hope to step up production by next year, and perhaps Exhausto heat will become as common as booster cables. While Al Cameron was using heat to start vehicles, Terrace's Ron Zuda was trying to keep heat out. Conwood is pretty much, as the name suggests, a combination of any type of wood or cellulose and concrete that you can build with. Why would I use this over brick?
Well, you've got an insulation factor of approximately R2 per inch, which in the building trade means that the stuff will insulate. So this would give you, say, an R12 on a 6-inch block. Plus, let's say you put a piece of 1-inch styrofoam on the outside of it, or on the inside, depends on how you want to build your building, and you've got an R24 rating on your house.
What's an R24 rating? That's a little technical for me.
Okay, well, that means that your house is well insulated.
And Zuda says his mixture of concrete and wood is also cheaper than normal brick and is an effective fire retardant.
It's been tested by the government-approved lab, which is Warnock-Hersey, and then by another private lab, BH Levelton down in Vancouver. And they both had different formulas, so the test results were slightly different. The Warnock-Hersey test samples were on a weaker type of system because I was doing for government testing for boards, which that one's not a sample of, but a reject, eh? Okay, let's say you...
About what percentage is this? How much wood, how much concrete is
this? This is about a 65% wood content, including about 20% bark, okay? Now this one here, we'll just heat this up with a torch. And the torch is rated at 6,400 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's pretty hot.
Yeah, tell me, how did you come to invent this, Ron?
It was an accident. It was an accident. I was mixing up some stuff down in my shop, and I accidentally made this stuff up and threw it outside for about 6 months. I found I wanted to get rid of it, and I couldn't get rid of it. You know, we've got pure oxygen on it. And I don't know whether you can see this, but it's about all you're going to get is a glow, and that's 100% oxygen. There's another advantage to this, too. Let's say that you do have a fire. You can put your hands right next to the flame, and you have virtually no heat transfer.
Unfortunately, Conwood hasn't met the ultimate test, having a building made of the product, but Zuda does have the patent, and he hopes to devote his attention to Conwood full-time. It was years ago that Al Cameron got the idea for his invention. It took a lot of tinkering in his workshop to come up with his first prototype, and even more time to begin manufacturing it. But what's taken the longest is getting patents. Cameron secured the patent for the States and has patent pending in 8 European countries, But his most valuable market is right here in Canada, and recently he secured that patent as well.
It's very time-consuming and very costly. There's a lot of paperwork involved, drawings, communications with patent attorneys and what have you. And I think the Canadian patent probably took about 2.5, 3 years to get.
His invention is called Exhausto-Heat, and it's relatively simple. He designed a special nozzle that fits onto the exhaust of a vehicle, and the heat coming off the exhaust is funneled out the other end.
If my vehicle won't start me and cold weather is the problem, and your vehicle is running, then I can use the exhaust from your vehicle to solve my problem. Generally speaking, the major problem is that the oil becomes thick and your motor won't turn over quickly enough. And I would imagine, you know, for the public, that would be the major use. However, once in a while you'll get ice in a starting motor or a fuel pump. You can use this device to thaw it out. Once in a while you'll get ice in a gas line, same thing, gas or ice in a carburetor. Often it won't turn over quickly enough because maybe the battery is down. By heating the battery, you can make it that much more efficient. You can use it for thawing out frozen hubs on four-wheel drives, which, by the way, we have already done.
Exhausto-Heat is now being tested by companies in the Northwest and as far away as Tuktoyaktuk. But for Cameron to start making money, he's going to have to mass produce.
But to start with, we're probably looking at getting some of the components manufactured in Vancouver, having them sent up here, and we feel that we could do the packaging and the distributing in Terrace.
That's going to take some time, but Cameron now knows with the rights to Exhausto-Heat, he has a little time to play with. He plans to keep pumping out his packages from his home while trying to arrange for larger production and marketing.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Nils Bowen is a little-known Volvo engineer who invented the V-type three-point safety belt in 1959 and saw his innovation through the universal adoption across the motor industry. It's hard now to imagine cars without them. Let us return to the archives as one Burns Lake resident seeks how to make the three-point seatbelt more comfortable.
Seatbelts save lives. We're told time and time again how strapped-in motorists escape serious injury and possible death by having the foresight to wear their seatbelts. An added incentive to wear the device is the $75 fine if you're caught without one. But many drivers and passengers still refuse to buckle up. The reason? It's uncomfortable.
Before, I hardly ever wore my seat belt. It was just too uncomfortable.
The solution? This gadget. A $10 piece of plastic designed to hold your seatbelt away from your neck and let it cross your chest where you want it to. The 3R seatbelt adjuster is the invention of a Burns Lake grandmother who is concerned about her comfort and her grandson's safety.
She saw her grandson being strapped in a seatbelt one day, and her daughter put it behind the boy's arm because the seatbelt came across his face like that, and it just wasn't comfortable. So she was concerned by that, and she went all over the country on a trip later, and she looked for something to buy to alleviate that problem. Of course, she couldn't find anything. There's nothing on the market available. So she came home. She has a leather shop as well, and she sat down in her saddle shop and made one out of leather. Just a similar
Mike Robertson says his mother, Sharon Robertson, wasn't taken seriously until she proved the little prototype could work. The 3R seatbelt adjuster seems to be a product of common sense, but nothing like it existed prior to the Robinsons' product.
You'll put the one bottom clip under your lap belt, like this, and you put your adjuster into the top slot first, push it down there, and snap it. And that's installed on your lap belt now. Okay. Now, in order to adjust it to a comfortable position, You just put your lap belt in the tongue on the adjuster and give your shoulder strap a little flip so it does sit flat. And there you have it. It separates the shoulder strap, or it separates your chest. It comes across the center of your chest. Makes it way more comfortable to wear, especially on a long trip. It's always there when you need it. It's always in the same position. It's on there fairly firm.
The clip slides easily across the lap belt and is tight enough to stay in place once you attach the shoulder strap. Robertson says its recommended 3-inch range will hold the shoulder strap in a safe and comfortable position for children and small women who are the most bothered by the conventional strap.
We don't recommend you adjusting to the center of your lap, or some people would want to do that just to do away with their shoulder strap, but which would make the seatbelt ineffective altogether.
Now, with the 3R seatbelt adjuster, you can finally wear your seatbelt in complete comfort.
This is a promotional tape put together by the Vancouver company the Robertsons have hired to market the product. Mike took it with him to a Prince George trade fair recently to test the waters. The interest didn't surprise him.
There was roughly 10,000 people there, and we sold 170 individual adjusters over the period of that trade show, which we figured was about almost 2% of the crowd. And the main person that bought it was probably 80% of them were women who were bothered by their shoulder strap.
It took the Robertsons a year to go from idea to marketing a product. They raised the capital selling shares and expect to spend nearly $120,000 before the adjuster is fully launched. Success, when it comes, may be swift.
Our insurance company is convinced that it'll make people wear their seatbelt properly, and they're hoping to get the seatbelt manufacturers to endorse the product, because they're concerned so many people are wearing their seatbelts improperly, and when they do get in a collision, they are injured because of that fact.
The Burns Lake family has hired an American firm to produce the 3R seatbelt adjuster, but Mike Robertson expects Canadians are going to buy them.
The Canadians have been more receptive to the product because they've been required to wear their seatbelts longer. They're used to wearing them, they feel safe in them, and they are more receptive to this product than Americans, because Americans, their seatbelt laws are relatively new, and they don't like people telling them what to do, and hence you have a problem with, we found people coming up to us saying, I don't want to wear that seatbelt anyway. So, but the Canadians have been great. They're the people that have been most supportive in this enterprise.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
After finding pieces of the Scrabble game missing, photo editor for the Montreal Gazette, Chris Hanley, and sports editor for the Canadian Press, Scott Abbott, decided to create their own game. On December 15, 1979, the game Trivial Pursuit was created in Montreal. In this final segment of Open Connection, a Smithers family shares the origins of their board game.
A family in Smithers plays a board game. Not just any game, but one they designed, produced, and are now selling themselves. It even says Smithers, BC, right on the box.
Basically, our family, we've kind of been wanting to do something as a family, a business type idea.
So last Remembrance Day, they came together to brainstorm and get started.
Then we came back at Christmas and we actually played the game with some of our friends and family as a prototype to give us some feedback on the game and the ideas of it.
A year later, it sits beside some of the best-known board games. It's in 9 provinces, 2 territories, and every community in the Northwest. Northern Drugs in Smithers was already ready to order more copies when Skeena Journal visited. The game says, discover your team's hidden talents in suburbia. And the family made a lot of discoveries through the process about business and their individual strengths.
Finding out the talents we all have that we never realized that we had or that the others had. That's been pretty cool.
It's a lot of work, and no, I think it's a real good idea. I'm very pleased with it, proud of my family that come up with this, actually, yeah.
Jack's son-in-law Derek was impressed by how games bring this family together.
Christmas Eve, when Jill and I were first dating, and instantly I was thrust into a board game. So I knew that was a big part of their lives. I had no idea that we would be creating our own.
Family members have turned their homes into suburbia headquarters. The Stroats have 2 rooms in their basement literally filled to the roof with game boxes. Suburbia is played by moving around a game board divided into sections of a neighborhood. What challenge you'll face depends on where you land.
Oh, a teacher, professor, oh, students, lecture hall.
It might be drawing with your wrong hand, unscrabbling letters to make a word, or the popular noise violation. Guess what sound Derek is making here?
That's some kind of motor. That's some kind of motor.
But before we reveal the answer, we go to Evergreen Industrial Supplies in Smithers, where you can find the Tube Tote. As a logger and equipment operator, Wes Westgarn of Houston uses a lot of industrial grease. Grease that comes in messy, squashable cardboard tubes.
Basically, it's a problem, and so it was something to solve the problem. It was an idea to solve the problem. And, I wasn't always so much worried that I was losing a few dollars worth of grease, but it was such a mess that it creates, and it's hard to clean up. So we designed a container to look after the needs of that.
The idea is simple. Tube Tote keeps grease and also caulking tubes organized and leak-free. Wes and his wife Stacy can now hold their vision in their hands and see it in stores like UAP Napa and Auto Parts Plus. Whether it's the predecessor of the Tube Tote, this plywood form, or the first version of Suburbia that took too long to play, trial and error is part of the invention's lifespan, as is persistence.
I had the idea for quite some time, but when I finally made up my mind that I was wanting to make this container, of course I told her about it, and I never quit telling her about it. I pretty much drove her nuts with the idea. I wouldn't leave it alone. So
Suburbia and Tube Tote are not alone among Northwest inventions. Neil Foreman of Prince Rupert manufactures tree guards and has this advice for up-and-coming inventors.
It's going to take a while. You don't just go out and buy a tree protector that we have ready for the market now and do it overnight. It's a long process. I've been at 2.5 years now.
There is help for the invention-minded out there from resource centers like Nadina Community Futures.
Specifically for an inventor, okay, they're going to have to look at a patent or an industrial design and the legalities behind that. Okay, so we can guide you to the government services that provide for that.
Online, check Community Futures website at cftcnadina.ca or the Canada BC Business Service Centre at sb.gov.bc.ca. Although it's not for everyone, entrepreneurial spirit says the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.